Trisha Yearwood is a name synonymous with powerhouse vocals, multi-platinum albums, and a culinary empire built on Southern comfort food. But behind the dazzling spotlight, beneath the smiling public persona, lies a woman who has weathered unimaginable storms, grief that shattered her world, and a love that quietly pieced her back together. Trisha's journey is one that begins like many others, with family. Her parents were not just a guiding force in her life. They were the foundation on which she built her identity. They weren't simply family, they were her best friends. Vacations were never an escape from them, but an escape with them. Most teenagers yearn for freedom, but for Trisha and her sister Beth, home was the center of their universe, and their parents were the heart of it. But life, in its unforgiving way, struck a cruel blow. Her father passed away just as Trisha's culinary career was taking off, a bittersweet rise to fame that tasted of loss more than of success. Her kitchen, meant to be a place of joy and creativity, became a silent reminder of all that she had lost. Grief settled like a shadow over her life, stirring within every dish, a silent ingredient that no recipe could mask. Then, just 3 years later, her mother followed. In losing them both, Trisha didn't just lose her parents. She lost her anchors, her cultural roots, the warm laughter over biscuits and gravy that had once filled their family kitchen. To the world, she remained the radiant star, the Grammy winner, the best-selling author. But behind closed doors, she wept over handwritten recipe cards, each dish a memory of what once was. In these quiet, agonizing moments, her sister Beth became her lifeline. They weren't just siblings, they were survivors of the same soul-crushing loss. Beth wasn't simply someone who knew Trisha's story, she was a part of it. Together, they clung to one another, finding solace in shared grief, drifting through a storm they never saw coming. But even as Trisha navigated this sea of sorrow, the stage lost its allure. The guitar, once a source of joy, now felt like a burden. Fame, once a dream, became a noise she wanted to escape. Trisha Yearwood, the household name, was slipping away, not in the eyes of the public, but within herself. And then, just as she stood on the precipice of leaving it all behind, one voice pulled her back: Garth Brooks. Known to the world as a country music titan, to Trisha, Garth was something far more important: a haven. He didn't try to fix her grief. He didn't offer hollow reassurances or try to rush her healing. Instead, he gave her space to break, and even more importantly, space to heal. Garth, larger than life on stage, became Trisha's quiet strength behind the scenes. He didn't simply stand by her. He actively sought to bring joy back into her world. Whether it was orchestrating surprise recordings with her sister or gifting her a rare Mustang to remind her of her carefree youth, his gestures were never about grandeur, but about memory, about showing her that life still held beauty, even amidst the pain. Perhaps his most poignant gesture came in the form of a song. One day, as Trisha listened to the final mix of one of her tracks, she heard a voice she hadn't expected: Beth's. Garth had secretly flown her sister in to record harmonies, a quiet reminder that no matter how much she lost, some pieces could always be found again. Slowly, Trisha began to rediscover herself, not as the grieving daughter or the fading star, but as a woman of resilience. And at the heart of this rebirth was Garth, not just a husband, but a partner who understood that sometimes saving someone means simply standing by them. Marriage is often romanticized, a dance of two souls, forever in harmony. But for Trisha Yearwood and Garth Brooks, it has been a duet sung under the unblinking eye of the public. Their love story, one of the most celebrated in country music, is as complex as any of their heartfelt ballads. Behind the radiant smiles and synchronized harmonies lies a marriage forged in passion, tested by fame, and strengthened by resilience. Being married to Garth Brooks, a man who can electrify a stadium of 70,000 with a single note, is both a gift and a challenge. For Trisha, it meant loving a man adored by millions, a man whose presence could fill any room, even when he wasn't there. It was never about competition, but there were moments when she wondered if her own light would be overshadowed by his towering legacy. Yet Garth has always been her biggest supporter, often stepping aside to ensure that her voice was heard, her story told. But even the most harmonious duets can struggle to stay in sync. Fame is a double-edged sword, and a marriage lived in the spotlight comes with its own unique set of challenges: tabloid whispers, public expectations, and the relentless pressure to appear picture-perfect can turn even the most private moments into a spectacle. Yet Trisha and Garth have found a way to remain grounded, their bond rooted in something far deeper than the roar of the crowd. For Trisha, this grounding came in the quiet comfort of her kitchen, a place where the chaos of the world seemed to melt away. Trisha's Southern Kitchen, her beloved television show, wasn't just a side project. It was a sanctuary. In that bright, cozy kitchen, she wasn't just a star, she was herself. But behind every cheerful episode, there were stories untold, recipes seasoned with nostalgia and a pinch of grief. The loss of her parents was a wound that never truly healed. For Trisha, their absence was a silence that settled over her life, a void that even the warmest memories couldn't entirely fill. Her mother's laughter, her father's steady voice telling stories while dinner simmered on the stove. These weren't just memories. They were part of the very fabric of her being. When they passed, it felt like someone had taken the heart out of her home. But Trisha is nothing if not resilient. In the face of loss, she did what she knew best. She cooked. Her kitchen became a canvas where she painted with flavors, where she could lose herself in the soothing rhythm of stirring, seasoning, and tasting. Each dish wasn't just food, it was a bridge to the past. Her mother's potato salad was more than a recipe. It was a resurrection, a whisper of Sunday afternoons spent laughing and sharing stories. A batch of her father's cornbread became a quiet conversation with the man who once told her she could be anything she wanted. Cooking was her way of remembering, but it was also her way of healing. It was a space where she could grieve without judgment, where she could cry over a cutting board or laugh at a failed soufflé. And as the show gained popularity, fans saw more than just a cheerful host. They saw a woman who was unafraid to share her truth. In an industry obsessed with perfection, Trisha offered something far more nourishing: authenticity. But even as her culinary career flourished, a quiet question loomed over her. Was she slowly stepping away from music? For years, her voice had been a constant companion to millions, a source of comfort and inspiration. Could she really leave that behind? Or was she simply searching for a new way to express herself? The answer came not in a grand announcement, but in quiet moments. Intimate performances, heartfelt ballads that seemed to speak directly to her own soul. Songs like "I Remember You" weren't just tracks on an album. They were confessions, raw and unfiltered. When Trisha recorded that song, she wasn't just singing, she was letting herself be vulnerable in a way that few stars ever dare. The lyrics were a mirror, reflecting the ache of loss she carried every day. And then there was Garth, her partner, her champion, her steady force. In the darkest moments, when grief threatened to swallow her whole, he was there. Not with empty platitudes, but with quiet, unwavering support. He didn't try to fix her sadness. He simply stood beside her, a constant reminder that she was not alone. It was Garth who understood that sometimes the most powerful gifts are the ones that touch the soul. Like the time he secretly flew in Trisha's sister to sing harmony on "I Remember You." When Trisha heard that familiar voice blending with hers, it was like feeling the presence of family she had lost. It wasn't just a harmony, It was a lifeline. Together, Trisha and Garth have built a life that defies the cliches of celebrity marriages. Their love is not a fairy tale. It is a story of two people who have faced heartbreak, who have battled self-doubt, and who have chosen, time and again, to stand by each other's side. They are not perfect, but they are perfectly real. But as the years pass and the demands of fame begin to quiet, another question begins to whisper through the stillness. What comes next? Is this chapter of her life a slow goodbye to the stage, or simply a pause before another powerful encore? To the world, Trisha Yearwood may be a country music icon, a culinary star, a television personality. But to those who truly understand her, she is something more, a survivor. She is a woman who has loved fiercely, lost deeply, and found a way to keep going. Behind the recipes, behind the Grammy-winning voice, is a heart that has been both broken and healed, a soul that has never stopped searching for meaning. Perhaps that is the true magic of Trisha Yearwood. She is not just a star, she is a story, one still being written. A story of a young girl with a voice that could light up a room, of a daughter who cherished her family, of a woman who learned to love herself in a world that constantly tried to change her. And whether she is on stage, in her kitchen, or quietly watching the sunset with Garth, one thing remains certain. Trisha Yearwood will always be more than a melody, more than a recipe. She will always be a voice, a heart, and a story that refuses to fade. Trisha Yearwood's life has always been an open book, a story written in melodies, seasoned with spices, and told through the comforting glow of a southern kitchen. But beneath the glossy veneer of television screens and the thunderous applause of concert halls lies a more complex narrative, one where joy and sorrow, fame and vulnerability stand side by side. Food has always been more than sustenance for Trisha. It was a language, a love letter passed down through generations, a way to hold on to those she had lost. As she stirred, whisked, and baked on her hit cooking show, each dish became an act of memory, a tribute to family recipes seasoned with laughter, love, and a touch of longing. Her fans saw a woman effortlessly whipping up Southern comfort food, sharing recipes that felt like warm embraces. But for Trisha, each bite carried a bittersweet truth. It was a way of preserving a past she could never fully return to. Yet, there was a cruel irony in this relationship with food. Even as she embraced the comforting art of cooking, Trisha was never free from the relentless gaze of public scrutiny. Fame has a way of magnifying everything, and for Trisha, it meant that her body was always on display, critiqued, commented on, judged. No matter how many albums she sold, no matter how many awards she won, there were always whispers about her weight, questions about her image, and cruel jabs that tried to reduce her talent to a number on a scale. But Trisha Yearwood was never one to hide. Instead of bowing to the impossible expectations of celebrity perfection, she leaned into the truth. She spoke candidly about her struggles with body image, the constant battle between self-acceptance and self-improvement. She refused to pretend that life was a perfect recipe, acknowledging the messy reality of trying to love yourself in a world that often tells you that you are not enough. Her cooking show became more than a showcase for recipes. It was a quiet revolution. Each episode was a celebration of realness, a space where viewers didn't just learn how to make biscuits or pies, but also saw a woman who wore her imperfections with grace. Trisha didn't hide behind the polished facade of a celebrity chef. She laughed when she made mistakes, shared stories of family heartbreak, and in doing so created a haven for those who, like her, were just trying to find comfort in a chaotic world. But even as the show's popularity soared, a quiet question simmered beneath the surface. Was there a new chapter waiting for Trisha? A recipe she hadn't yet written, a truth she hadn't yet sung? Music had always been her first language, and no song captured her heart quite like I Remember You. For most listeners, it was a hauntingly beautiful ballad, but for Trisha, it was something else entirely. A goodbye she never truly got to say. The first time she saw the lyrics, she felt an ache in her chest. They spoke of longing, of voices no longer heard, of hands no longer held. The words were a mirror, reflecting the emptiness she felt after losing her mother. For Trisha, memories of her mother were not just photographs or heirlooms. They were the laughter that filled the kitchen, the handwritten recipe cards stained with years of use, the phone calls she would never again hear. Recording the song was an emotional battlefield. The studio, usually a space of creativity and joy, became a confessional. Trisha's voice trembled, her eyes stung with tears. At one point, she nearly walked out, unable to bear the weight of grief that each note seemed to carry. But Trisha had always been brave in her vulnerability. She knew that music, at its core, was honesty, and this song demanded nothing less. And then came a moment of unexpected grace. Her husband, Garth Brooks, understanding the depth of her pain, orchestrated a gift that would leave her speechless. Without her knowledge, he arranged for Trisha's sister to fly in and record harmony on the track. It was a quiet, powerful gesture, a reminder that even in the depths of sorrow, she was never truly alone. When Trisha first heard the final mix, the soft, familiar voice of her sister blending with her own, she broke down. It was more than a harmony. It was a reunion, a reminder of a bond that loss could never sever. It wasn't just a song. It was a shared memory, a whispered promise that those they loved were never truly gone. But even with this cathartic moment, the struggle didn't simply vanish. Grief is not a battle that can be won. It is a wound that must be tended to day after day. For Trisha, the kitchen remained a sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in the rhythm of cooking, where the scent of a simmering stew could momentarily drown out the echoes of emptiness. Yet it was also a battlefield, a reminder of her complex relationship with food and self-image. Critics, as they always do, continued to speculate. Was she more interested in her cooking show than her music now? Had she lost her edge? But those who truly understood her saw a woman who was redefining success on her own terms. Trisha wasn't chasing fame. She was chasing peace. Her journey wasn't about walking away from the stage. It was about walking toward herself. And yet, the stage never truly let her go. Trisha Yearwood had always been more than a voice. She was a storyteller, a truth teller, someone who could take the messiness of life and turn it into something beautiful. The same woman who stirred a pot of stew on national television could still silence an arena with a single note. In a world that demands constant reinvention, Trisha's greatest rebellion was her refusal to pretend. She didn't hide her grief, she didn't shy away from her struggles, and she didn't package herself as a perfect celebrity. Instead, she stood as she was, flawed, fierce, and undeniably real. And that, perhaps, is why fans continue to cling to her music, her stories, her laughter. Because Trisha Yearwood isn't just an icon. She is a reminder that the most beautiful lives are the ones that embrace every note, sweet and bitter, every recipe, simple and complex, and every memory, joyful and heartbreaking. As whispers of new projects begin to swirl and fans wonder if another album or tour is on the horizon, one thing is certain: Trisha's story is far from over. Whether she stands behind a microphone or a kitchen counter, she will continue to sing, to share, and to stir hearts. Because for Trisha Yearwood, life has always been a song, and she is nowhere near the final verse. Close friends knew the truth. They saw it not just in the way Trisha Yearwood spoke, but in the way she moved, slower, more deliberate, a quiet contemplation replacing the once unrelenting rush of fame. For years, Trisha had been a force on stage, a voice that soared effortlessly over roaring crowds. But now, as the years slipped by, the glare of the spotlight seemed less inviting. It wasn't that she resented the stage, far from it. She loved the music, the fans, the shared energy of a packed arena. But somewhere along the way, something changed. The first cracks appeared after she lost her parents. Their passing wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a seismic shift, a reminder of life's fragility. In the quiet moments, when the noise of the crowd had faded and the cameras were turned off, Trisha found herself drawn not to the bright lights, but to the warmth of her own kitchen, the gentle rustle of her dogs at her feet, and the steady, unwavering presence of her husband, Garth Brooks. What once felt like a dream, life on the road, the thrill of performing, now seemed like a distant echo, overshadowed by the quiet comforts of home. Rumors began to swirl. Was she stepping back? Had the legendary Trisha Yearwood lost her edge? Critics whispered that she was more interested in her cooking shows than her music, a sentiment that stung but didn't break her. Trisha knew the truth. It wasn't that she was walking away, it was that she was choosing where to stand. Offers poured in, another Vegas residency, a new reality show, a lucrative book deal. She turned them down, not out of spite, but out of a quiet determination to protect what mattered. Her voice, her memories, the small sacred moments that fame could never replicate. Yet even as she retreated from the relentless march of the industry, the music never fully left her. There were nights when she would find herself standing in her kitchen, a melody catching in her throat, a lyric lingering in her mind. And then there was Garth. Steady, supportive Garth, who never pressured her but always knew what she needed. "You've already proven everything you need to," he would remind her, his voice a gentle reassurance. "Now it's about doing what fills your soul." Those words weren't just a comfort. They were a key, unlocking something within her that she thought she had lost. Music became less about performance and more about expression. She began singing again, not for the fame, but for herself. Songs that spoke to her soul, lyrics that carried the weight of her journey, the joy, the grief, the love that had defined her life. And just when the world began to settle into this quieter, more introspective Trisha, she surprised everyone. It was a small venue, an intimate crowd, and she stepped onto the stage with a calm, almost ethereal presence. Her voice, clear and powerful, soared through the room, each note carrying a weight of emotion that left the audience breathless. There were no grand theatrics, no flashy lights, just her, a microphone, and the truth of her voice. The performance wasn't just a concert, it was a statement, a reminder that she was still here, still singing, still telling her story, but on her terms. For those who knew her, it was a quiet triumph. Trisha Yearwood was not fading, she was transforming. The woman who had once defined success by chart-topping hits and sold-out tours was now finding it in quiet mornings with Garth, in handwritten recipes worn soft with use, in the laughter of close friends. Fame had been a chapter, an extraordinary one, but it was never the whole story. Trisha Yearwood's journey has always been more than just a tale of fame. It is a story of evolution, resilience, and a relentless quest for meaning. As whispers of retirement continue to swirl around her, there is a palpable sense of uncertainty. Has she truly sung her final verse on the big stage, or is she simply stepping back to catch her breath? Those who know her best understand one thing: Trisha has never been defined by convention. For decades, she was the voice that filled countless lives with warmth and heartbreak, each note a testament to her extraordinary ability to channel raw emotion. She was the star whose albums soared to the top of the charts, the television host who invited fans into her kitchen, and the wife who stood steadfastly by the side of country music's most electrifying performer, Garth Brooks. But behind the polished image was a woman quietly navigating the most human of struggles: loss, identity, and the search for purpose. The first signs of change were subtle, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. Friends noticed that she grew increasingly protective of her time, especially after the profound loss of both her parents. For Trisha, it wasn't just the loss of two beloved figures. It was a fracture in the very foundation of her world. Her mother's laughter that once filled a room, her father's reassuring voice, all of it now just memories. Grief has a way of reshaping us, of forcing a reckoning with who we are without those who once defined our world. For Trisha, the stage lights, once a source of exhilaration, began to feel distant, their warmth replaced by something colder, almost haunting. The thunderous cheers that once sent a thrill down her spine now felt like echoes. Instead of seeking the rush of applause, she found herself craving the quiet, the soft hum of her kitchen, the gentle chaos of her dogs, and the undistracted moments with Garth on their porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. But this wasn't a dramatic exit. Trisha Yearwood didn't simply vanish from the spotlight. Instead, she began a quiet recalibration. The offers kept pouring in. Another Vegas residency, a new reality series, even a lucrative book deal. Once, these opportunities would have set her pulse racing. Now, they felt like distractions, glittering but hollow, and so she began to turn them down, one by one. For Trisha, this was not about rejecting fame. It was about choosing authenticity over artifice, substance over spectacle. It was about protecting what had become sacred, her memories, her music, and those rare, irreplaceable moments of peace. In a world obsessed with the constant chase for more, she was daring to say, enough. Garth Brooks, her steadfast partner in both life and music, understood this shift better than anyone. A legend in his own right, he knew the seductive pull of the stage, the relentless hunger of the spotlight. But he also knew that true love means letting someone be who they are, even when that means letting go. "You've already proven everything you need to," he would whisper to her in those quiet twilight moments. "Now it's about doing what fills your soul." It was a freedom few stars ever achieve, the freedom to say no, to step away, to live on their own terms. Yet even as she retreated from the spotlight, Trisha's fire never truly faded. This became evident one unforgettable night when she stepped onto the stage of a packed venue with little warning. In the darkness, the audience held its breath, and then her voice, rich and unmistakable, filled the room. But this wasn't just another performance. There was something raw, almost vulnerable, in the way she sang. Each note was a confession, a glimpse into the heart of a woman who had loved, lost, and found a way to keep going. For those who were there, it felt less like a concert and more like a conversation, one where Trisha was speaking directly to each soul in the crowd. And as the final note lingered in the air, there was a moment of stunned silence before the thunderous applause, not just because of the power of her voice, but because of the power of her truth. Trisha wasn't singing for fame, for money, or for another award. She was singing for herself, for the girl who first fell in love with music, for the woman who lost her parents, for the wife who found a partner who understood her silence as well as her song. But even in this moment of vulnerability, the whispers didn't stop. Speculation ran wild. Was this her goodbye? Had she lost her edge? Was she retreating into the quiet comfort of her kitchen for good? Trisha, ever the enigma, offered no answers, because she knew something that the world seemed to forget. Not every question needs an answer. Sometimes, life is about living in the mystery, about letting the story unfold without rushing to the final chapter. And so, as the world continues to speculate, Trisha Yearwood remains an open book, her story still being written. Perhaps she will step away from the stage entirely, choosing instead to savor the simplicity of slow mornings and shared recipes. Or perhaps, like the ember that refuses to die, she will return once more, her voice soaring above the crowd, a reminder of everything she has been and everything she still is. For now, all we know is this: Trisha Yearwood is more than a star. She is a woman who has lived, who has loved, who has lost, and who has found the courage to simply be. Whether she is singing to a sold-out arena or stirring a pot of her mother's chicken soup, her voice, both in music and in life, will never truly fade. Because a true artist doesn't need the spotlight to shine. They carry their light within them. And Trisha Yearwood, despite the whispers, despite the rumors, is still shining in her own quiet, powerful way.